Streaming live from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is a news update.
Welcome to the Digital Desk through News on 6 and News 9. We wanted to take some time today to talk about some breaking news that has happened. George Nigh, the former governor of the state of Oklahoma, has died at the age of 98 years old. He was a huge figure in Oklahoma politics, in the history of the state of Oklahoma, and he's leaving a lasting impact on the state as well. I want to show you some highlights from George Nigh's life. So he passed away today, 98 years old. He was born in 1927, died today in 2025. He was the 17th and 22nd governor. Now, the 17th governor is kind of deceiving. This was when he was lieutenant governor, only served about a week or so, but best known as a governor back in the 1980s. He was the first governor to win all 77 counties in this state as well. Later in his life, back in the 1990s, he became the president of UCO as well. Politicians on both sides of the aisle have come forward today to discuss his death. Governor Kevin Stitt sent a statement. This is just part of the statement. He also says that him and his wife are praying for their family. But he says this: "I am saddened to hear of the loss of a true Oklahoma statesman and public servant. George Nigh guided Oklahoma through difficult times and led with kindness and humility." George Nigh, of course, 98 years old, had a lot of history in this state. Somebody that got to know George Nigh is our political analyst over at News on 6, and Scott Mitchell. Scott is joining us today, and we're going to talk more about this, and let me see if I can pull him up real quick. There you are, Scott. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes for us and joining us. And first off, for somebody that's younger like myself, or somebody that did not grow up in Oklahoma, George Nigh, you may have heard the name, but you don't really know much about him. So give us some perspective on George Nigh's life and what he meant to the state of Oklahoma.
If there's ever going to be a Mount Rushmore of Oklahoma, he's the first head that'll be on that mountain. Okay, and from the 50s on until probably 20 years ago, it was the age of George Nigh, and perhaps everybody remembers the movie Forrest Gump, and Forrest was always there at some sort of historical situation in history. That George Nigh was like that, except in real life. I mean, he was there as, I get a kick out of that. He was in boot camp when World War II ended, and he joked, he said, "Hey, the Japanese heard I was coming, so they surrendered." Yeah. and then he comes home to McAllister, Oklahoma, and he goes back to work in a grocery store, and he's delivering groceries to Carl Albert, who became Oklahoma's only Speaker of the House. Just imagine this. It's like a movie set. And then becomes lieutenant governor. His first race against this is a great name from Oklahoma history, Cowboy Pink Williams. Finishes second in the primary, comes back 300,000 vote deficit, wins. He's sitting in his long answer, Jonathan. He's sitting at home January 1, 1963. He has finished last in the Democrat primary for governor. Sitting at his mom and dad's house, lieutenant governor. Governor Edmondson's at the Orange Bowl. I think Joe Namath and Alabama are about to whip us. And he gets a phone call from a reporter, and the phone call is that Senator Kerr has died, the most powerful United States senator in Oklahoma history. And he becomes governor for the first time there. And that revives his career. He was out of politics for several years. He was there the day as the governor whenever Penn Square Bank failed. He was there the day that he appointed Henry Bellman to be DHS secretary here in Oklahoma, of active bipartisanship. It goes on and on and on, becomes president of UCO. And his hallmark, Governor Stitt said it best, efficiency and humility. He hated the sort of politics we're having right now. And the stories can go on and on and on, Jonathan.
Well, if you just showed up right now in Oklahoma politics. It's a very red state, very Republican. It was different back, obviously, in the day. The thing that I've kind of gathered today is he's getting a lot of, love from both sides of the aisle. You have Democrats, Republicans. It was obviously a different time, but can you talk about, did he work on both sides of the aisle? Was he well respected among a lot of Oklahomans? We mentioned it. He was the first governor to win all 77 counties in the state of Oklahoma.
Yes, he was. So as humility and he was a golden rule type guy. Okay, he just didn't want to throw anybody under the bus, regardless of partisanship. And he was a visionary at a really difficult time in the 50s, in the 60s, the 80s. Whenever that Penn Square Bank went under, he tried to work across the aisle. And the Bellman story is a prime example of Democrats were running the whole show at the time. And even his staff, he tells the story, they were going, he's a Republican. And he goes, need somebody that can run DHS, scandal ridden and all kinds of problems. Sound like today? And he wanted to show bipartisanship, but Republicans weren't even they weren't on the stage legislatively at the time. And so he was one of the sort of people that showed that bipartisanship can work and, treat your neighbor well.
Yeah, and I was reading he was also a teacher for a little bit too, down in McAllister. It seems like he did a lot of different stuff. And you lived for 98 years, you're gonna do a lot of different things. But to think about it, from the 50s, we've even seen some stuff from him recently. And you spoke with him recently too, over at UCO. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that and kind of how your relationship with George Nigh has been?
Well, I was in television when I got out of school at OU and went into television, and then became the first spokesman for the State Bureau of Narcotics. George Nigh was the governor, and John Reed, his press secretary, put together a panel for public affairs folks in state governments. I've still got that letter; it's on my wall, signed by George Nigh. It's a treasure, and he became a neighbor of ours, my wife's and I, in Quail Creek for a while, and we would see them walking. And George Nigh was never ever considered himself a celebrity. And so I approached a couple of his friends and I said, has he ever really done? And of course, Bob Burke is the master of Oklahoma history, but I wanted to try to do something from a standpoint of videotape and visually. And he agreed to do it. I'm a nobody. He did 6 hours with me at UCO from the 50s and 60s, went through all these. And it was just we got to be friends, and it became one of those, I got to hear more and more stories. I remember my dad was the last Democrat A&B chief in Oklahoma, appropriation budget. And when that group of rural Democrats left, term limits, the Republicans took over, George Nigh led a dinner. It was at the time, it was the Liberty Bank building. The Skirvin was dark across the street. George was master of ceremonies, but there were all of these people making these speeches, and they were long and typical sort of speeches. And George was just emceeing. And as we got up to leave, the last one, people started pulling on their coats, and he said, "There's one thing I wanted to say." And I told my wife, I said, "Watch this." And he started spinning a tale about that. At the time, the Skirvin was empty, about a legislator who they thought had died, and they were having a service on the House floor when the legislator, who apparently was just in a stupor, walked in and asked George, he goes, "What's going on?" Wait, he was the greatest after dinner speaker. And to this day, there has never been a greater speaker. And George Nigh would write his notes on the palm of his hand. So when I started my business in the early 80s, I started copying that. This guy was every man, commanding respect, and knew everybody in the world. His stories about meeting Emperor Hirohito. And this is one of my favorite Nigh stories. When we got ready to do this series, 6 hours, and it was going to be, I wanted to roll it out on his 100th birthday. That's what I wanted to do. So it's been in the vault for all this time. And he said, "I need to check your Oklahoma history chops." He goes, "True or false? Governor George Nigh is the reason that we have the state song. The state song is Oklahoma." And I said, "Yeah." And he went, "Wrong. Representative George Nigh is the reason we have the state song Oklahoma. He sat in his bedroom as a kid and listened to the radio and loved that song and that play. So this is a guy who never stopped selling Oklahoma. And in the series, he over and over. I remember when he was leaving as governor, people going, "Is he going to go to Washington? Is he going to be running for Congress?" And never. He didn't want to. He wanted. He loved the state.
That's awesome. We have some sound that you provided for us from these talks, and I want to play a few of those clips, and then just kind of hear what you have to say. So I'm going to play the first one now, and we'll get your thoughts.
So even in school, grade school, even in junior high, even in high school, even in junior college, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be governor.
Well, and you just
It's
mentioned,
amazing.
yeah, it is. And you just mentioned, you thought maybe he'd go to Washington. He wanted to be governor. He had a love for the state of Oklahoma.
And it was forged in the people he knew down in McAllister. First off, the stories about Carl Albert, and tells the story about Carl Albert when Carl Albert was a young man, seeing a congressman when it was Oklahoma was a territory, come through town in a horse and buggy, and Carl Albert saying, "I want to do that." And his friendships around the world and becoming lieutenant governor, there was really not much reason for lieutenant governor. They went, they got up every morning, and if the governor was still alive, they went back to bed. So he decided selling Oklahoma, and that's what he did. He went to work for the Jaycees, by the way. When he was out of government, he became a spokesman for Jaycees and traveled the world doing that, selling Oklahoma. It's just, guy's too real.
You can make almost a movie out of it. All right, let's play the next clip that you sent us.
Fascinated by how far back you finished to Cowboy Pink and how you came up with 300-something thousand votes in the runoff. That's an amazing comeback.
Yeah, and I beat him in the runoff.
That's an amazing. When you look at what happened, you okay? We've got to spend a little time on that campaign because
whatever you want to do. Your show.
No, this is yours.
Your show.
First off, yeah, the smile.
Yeah, well, in Cowboy Pink, it came up again.
Yeah, Cowboy Pink Williams was a lieutenant governor, and George defeated him and just kept on working. It was his first big statewide race, 300,000 out. But it was funny. That's George. I mean, he was doing me a favor just to come in and meet me at UCO, and then he was like, "Oh no, this is your deal." I said, "No, Governor, this is yours. This is about you." But he's always thinking about other people. By the way, he tells the story about how that he still had the pen in this episode. He still had the pen that Johnston Murray, Governor Murray, had signed to make the song, the official state song of Oklahoma. We were talking about, I was at lunch with him. He said, "You want to see it?" We go out. It's in the trunk of his car. And he had a traveling road show, and he was showing people this. You can't make this stuff up.
No, it's great. And we have kind of a fun clip for the last one, and we'll play that.
Way out here.
By plane. No, just doing a job search, and I found a position that was open.
Oh, okay, good. Good for you. Well, you'll love. If you make it, then good luck. You'll love this area, this town, this university. You'll love it.
Well, hopefully you can give me a good recommendation.
Well, let's see. Am I running for office?
We could get the rumor going.
Now, if you'll vote for me, I'll consider you.
I'll get my whole family to vote for you.
Even though it's not even old enough, huh? Good luck to you.
Thank you, sir. Nice to meet you guys.
You picked a good place to look.
Thank you.
Just a great sense of humor, and he didn't even know the camera was on him necessarily, or he maybe just ignored it, But, he was just talking to just a young guy there about, living in Oklahoma. And we mentioned it, that he became the president of UCO too, so probably a big fan of that university. Yeah,
we weren't taping that in the building that has his name, but we were in the journalism school, and Professor Desiree Hill, who's down at Gaylord, has put this together. Thank you, Desiree, for all your work on that. And it was 6 episodes: the 50s, his lieutenant governor years, his governor years, his second term where our economy bottomed out and what he did about that, and then retirement and his UCO years. And story after story. The story about Oklahoma had a state song, and it's not a good one. Okay. And he got pushback from fellow legislators. He pulled back, Jonathan. He was like, I'm going to lose the vote on this. And then staged basically a Broadway play to whip up support for this on the floor of the House to get it through. And the only Oklahoman that ever played Curly on Broadway showed up in character and to get this bill through. It's just some of these things, every one of these stories are true. It's just an amazing man. He was he was something. I've been this morning as I was going through this, I was incredibly sad. Still am. But his friends are rejoicing today. 98 years. My wife says to me, "Hey, it's pretty good years."
Yeah.
And all I can think about is Donna and Georgianne and all his family. The state has lost maybe the greatest treasure ever.
And Scott, I want to end with this. You kind of said it there, but what is his legacy going to be when we look back, 20, 30, 50, 100 years on George Nigh and on his impact on the state of Oklahoma?
A great question. Well, he built more roads than anybody up to his point. He did that in such a way he didn't want partisanship involved. Before that, it was, we'll build a road, such and such is living over there. And that he really did focus on, at the time, trying to improve human services in the state of Oklahoma by his appointment of Henry Bellman at DHS. He also was a sort of person that led by example. And I think maybe it'll be 20 years or so down the road where that everything George Nigh stood for, he stood in opposition to the tenor and timbre of our discussions that we're having now. And he stands in stark relief to what goes as the standard, unfortunately. And he's just, humility and dignity and kindness. So when that comes back into vogue, he'll be back on the front of Mount Rushmore.
All right, Scott, we really appreciate you taking a few minutes, your insight, getting to know him, later in his life, and you becoming, friends with him personally. Are you working on all of that video? Are you going to put it together for something here in the future?
I think so. And I kind of let it out of the bag. We did this. I didn't know, when am I going to do this? When am I going to do this? And I had settled on his 100th birthday. The years went by. I'm going, it becomes more poignant. This was taped in 19 and 20. But one day we were taping during the first day of, I can't remember which Trump impeachment it was. And I said, what about, he goes, I'm not watching it. He was not interested in partisanship. And his decency went all the way to the court. My dad, when he went in the legislature, I believe Governor Nigh was the first governor. And in the early 80s, when he was trying to dig the state out of the budget, and people just, all right, Penn Square Bank, all the things were happening right there, he was vilified. I mean, he really was. And so he just led a steady hand at maybe one of the most difficult times in Oklahoma history. And he never got mad. One of the things we saw in it, he talked about, he goes, he went very deep into freedom of the press. We spent a lot of time about that, Jonathan. And what he said, what I was looking at this morning, I was going, man, we could play that right now. So the short answer is yes, very soon. I want to put this out. I want to talk with Desiree Hill and Bob Burke and others, because it's a magnificent thing. That clip we had a while ago was, both of those we were setting up, and kid bumped into the mic, and that's when it got that funny one. And also the kid that was setting up sound on the second episode. Mm-hmm. He just never stopped selling Oklahoma. And I've got a bite that was out. He was going, man, you don't have to be from Texas or New York or California. You can make it from here. The man sold Oklahoma and the goodness of Oklahoma till his last day.
I love that. A lasting legacy for sure. Scott Mitchell, thank you so much for taking a few minutes this afternoon. And we'll continue to talk about them, and we'll have more, obviously, not only on digital, but on News on 6 and on news9.com. Scott, thank you.
Thanks, Coop. See you soon.
See ya. And we're going to have much more coverage, as I said, both on News on 6 and on News 9. And we'll have more coverage here on this digital desk as well as on YouTube. So thank you for taking a few minutes of your day to watch us as we look back on the life of a great Oklahoman, George Nigh. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for watching this Oklahoma's own digital studio stream. Stay with News on 6 online and on television anytime for the latest news, weather, and sports.